Well, joining us now to talk about the life and times of the late President Muhammad Buhari is Professor Ibrahim Gambari, who served as Chief of Staff to the President of Nigeria between 2020 to 2023. Thank you so much, Professor Gambari, for joining us on the news tonight. Our condolences to you. We do know you were very close to the President. If you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great.
Thank you for having me on. Yeah.
Thank you. You first served under President Buhari during his military rule in 1980s, and again decades after as his Chief of Staff under two very different Nigeria. Can you tell us what remained unchanged about Buhari in those two different eras?
Well, first of all, I'm in Katsina and in Daura, where in the company of the governor of Katsina State, we visited the family, the Emir of Daura, and we're getting ready to receive the body of the late president. You are quite correct that I was privileged to be one of the 18 ministers that the late president, who was then head of the federal military government, appointed to serve in the cabinet in January 1984. There are only 3 of us left of that 18. And he was our leader under a military dispensation. Now, Nigeria had just come out of a failed election and the intervention by the military in taking over the government. And the president ruled by decree. We were then ministers in an advisory capacity. We were not members of the Supreme Military Council, which was both the legislature, the executive, and almost the judiciary. But when he called me back to serve him as his Chief of Staff, 35 years later, he came. He was a democratically elected president who had also been re-elected in 2019. One thing that was very constant, that it was a very direct, a very strict, a very determined leader, but always with the interests of the masses of the people at heart. Secondly, he gives people the responsibilities, his aides, his ministers, and leaves them to execute their duties. Of course, some do it credibly, but of course, a few others abuse the kind of trust that he placed in them. So the love of the people of Nigeria, the commitment to service, are things that are very, very much constant in the two periods and two epochs that were very different in character. Nigeria had changed, he himself has changed, the African continent has changed, the world has changed. But nonetheless, he as the leader maintained that constance, which I believe endeared him to the people who, when he became a Democrat, a converted Democrat, elected him to be president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in 2015 and re-elected him in 2019 for a second term.
Professor Ibrahim Gambari, thank you very much for that. Having served in his cabinet between 2020 and 2023, and indeed, the late president has been described in very glowing terms as a man of integrity, a straight ramrod man, zero tolerance for corruption and all of that. And of course, with his military background, many expected that the state of security in Nigeria would be top-notch. Would you say that President Buhari died a happy man, considering the state of the nation at the time he, stepped down as president? The state of insecurity, the issues of corruption, and other challenges that Nigeria continues to face.
Well, if the problem, let's take security. If the problem of security were easy to solve, it would have been solved. And if it could have been solved by military means alone, it will have been solved. I think my position is very clear that he inherited an awful situation. 17 local governments in the northeast of Nigeria were controlled by Boko Haram with a flag, Islamic flag hosted in these areas. Now, by the time he left, none of these, no part of Nigeria was under the control of Boko Haram. Of course, they went after other targets, soft targets, but my position is that in the end, we cannot solve the problem of insecurity in Nigeria by military means alone. Secondly, we cannot leave the solution to the security situation in the country to one man alone. Of course, as president, he takes primary responsibility for that principal role of government, but it has to be all of government, all of nation approach, with everybody having their responsibility to perform. On the issue of corruption, again, he led by example, because you can say what you like about the late President Buhari, but nobody could say he was a thief or that he made away with the government treasury. Again, he set up mechanism, he believed in processes, the EFCC, ICPC, and others that were in place. He expected them to function, but he expected all Nigerians to participate in addressing these national challenges and regard them as national challenges. I think history will be kind to him. I'm convinced that when we have time to reflect, and I believe that we Nigerians often do not appreciate any leader until maybe when they are no longer with us, or sometimes even after they are no longer with us. But I think it's important to recognize the progress that was made and the challenges that remain, and I believe that he could not have passed happy with the state in which the country was, even after he left. But they expected that when elections come and new leadership are appointed, that's their own responsibility now to advance the gains that are made, to correct some of the mistakes that may have been made, and to get on with the affairs of the state. He did his bits, and he put all his experiences to bear in running the affairs of this country. And please remember that here was a man, he commanded 3 of the 4 divisions of the Nigerian army. He was Minister of Petroleum, he was governor of what is now 6 states, he was a military head of state, he headed PTF, he ran for election to be president 4 times and only succeeded the 4th attempt before getting re-elected. So with that background, with that experience, he served to the best of his ability, faithfully and selflessly. That can never be taken away from him.
Indeed, Professor Gambari, President Buhari had some wins very early in his administration, I must add. Boko Haram in the northeast region was brought to a barest minimum, and over 100 of the abducted Chibok girls were released under his watch in the very early days of his administration. But most Nigerians will wonder why that momentum was not kept. In fact, officials were told returned stolen funds in the early days of his administration. So what went wrong? But most importantly, I want to ask you, Professor Gambari, many high-ranking officials such as yourself paint the late president in very glowing tributes. But on the streets, because Arise News has gone around the country, and we'll see posts on social media, many Nigerians seem indifferent about a president who served them 2 different eras, one of the longest serving presidents. Why do you think they are so disconnected and so indifferent about a man who you say, served Nigeria to the best of his ability?
Well, I would say partly exaggerated expectation that one man under a democratic dispensation could resolve all the problems that are plaguing the country. You recall that the style of attacking corruption when he was first head of state, he himself said it, that he locked up 2,500 politicians and presumed them guilty until they proved themselves innocent. Sadly, well, when he became a democratically elected president, he cannot do that. The Constitution does not allow him to do that. He has to walk through the democratic process. So the expectations were based on what he was able to do as a military dictator, but obviously the democratic setting will not be possible. And I want to return to the point I'm making, that the problems of Nigeria the challenges of Nigeria can only be addressed by Nigerians, not by one man, not even by one administration, but the totality of our efforts. And by the way, we never painted President Buhari in all glowing terms. Those of us who serve with him recognize daily and grapple with some of these challenges. For example, the military. Go and check. Everything the military asked for in terms of weaponry, he provided. At one point, he even sent me to Washington to talk with the administration there to release the helicopters that were paid for, attack helicopters, but which were being withheld. They were released subsequently. So he does his bit. The rest of the country, at all levels, local government, state government, the civil society, I think this assumption of responsibility is something that we have to work on, and not believe that one man or one administration can solve all the problems that is plaguing us. What we need to do is, where were we before and where are we by the time he ended? And I'm sure he would have wished that he could have achieved a lot more than he did, but nonetheless, he believes strongly, and I agree, that he's done his best for this country under the circumstances and with the resources that were available.
Now, speaking of what more the late president could have done, many Nigerians, not a few, are actually surprised, or maybe the word is not surprised, but still, wondering how the president who ruled for 8 years, and incidentally, another former president also in the same hospital where former president died, that in 8 years, there was no international standard hospital that could have taken care of the president. What do you think is systemically wrong? Because even the late president himself did say, when he was referred to as President Go Slow, that yes, we have to go slow because the system is slow. What does it say about Nigeria and Nigeria's leadership trust, for the Nigerian system, where our leaders have to go abroad to attend to their health care?
Well, that's a fair point. But also, by the time he left, I think, again, leading by example, if you look at the State House medical facilities, go and look at it, state of the art. He also encouraged Afrexim Bank to build a world-class medical facility right there in Abuja. It was under his watch, not with Nigerian money, but with Afrexim Bank money. So, I don't think that anybody would like to just go abroad for the sake of it, but individuals they have to take their own health seriously and go, if they can afford it, to go to where they can get the best medical attention. But you are right that we ought to have done better, because there was a time when the University College Hospital, part of University of Ibadan, that Arab sheikhs used to come and do their medical checkups in Ibadan there, Go and check the records. So we are falling behind because we have neglected maintenance. We have not put enough resources into education, into healthcare services that we should have. But under his watch, it's true he went to where he could get the best medical attention, but he has began the process of trying to lead by example and hoping that others will follow. And some are following. Babalola, Afe Babalola University, look at their medical facilities. Base University, I'm not trying to do commercials for these two universities, but as an academician myself, they have put resources in top class, world-class hospitals. Let other people follow those examples and not believe and depend that the government has to do this all by themselves.
Don't worry, Prof. We know where to send the receipts for the commercials. if we do deem them so. But let me ask you as we wrap up, Professor Gambari, because you had a front row seat as the Chief of Staff to the late president. What was the president like outside of the corridors of powers? And were you with him in the few weeks leading up to the unfortunate passing? What was he like?
Well, many people will be surprised that the late President Buhari actually has a tremendous sense of humor. Tremendous sense of humor. But it only comes through when he's relaxed and with the people who he trusts. Tremendous sense of humor, but his commitment to the welfare of Nigeria has never wavered. So whether in private, whether formally and informally, he was committed to the masses of this country and wanted to avoid doing anything that will really make the situation of the ordinary people in Nigeria worse than he found it. A good man, he loved his country, and I just wish that Nigerians as a whole will love their country with all the challenges, because only if we love our country that we can say proudly that we are Nigerians. And look at what happens abroad. Nigerians excel abroad. They excel. You know, why is it that we cannot be proud of our country and try to excel both at home and as many of our people are excelling abroad? But he was a good man, a fantastic family man. He had no guest houses, unlike some of the people I would not name names. What you see is what you get. Very disciplined. And incidentally, he eats his 3 meals a day religiously. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And he exercises. So just a decent human being who loves his country, loves his family, and wishes the best for Nigeria. I'm sure they will have wished that Nigeria was in an even better position by the time he left, but he felt satisfied that he did his best. And I believe that history will be kind to him to say, here's a man, loved his country, did his best, and wished his country the best, and to have a place in West Africa, in Africa that is respected, and a strong voice in the world.
Well, Professor Gambari, hopefully the late President Muhammadu Buhari left proteges that can not only step into his shoes, very large shoes at that, but to, copy from this trait of integrity and zero tolerance for corruption and, of course, the love for the nation. Professor Ibrahim Gambari, thank you very much for joining us on Newsnight. He was Chief of Staff to the late President between 2020 and 2023.